So what about the autopsy? Now, that's really for an assassination investigation or any murder investigation, that's probably the single most important set of evidence that you have. Not always, but typically that's the case. Now, the doctors who performed the autopsy, there were 3 doctors responsible for the autopsy. I took their depositions under oath in the National Archives. This was the first time that they had had a systematic deposition taken, so there's a legal inquiry, there's a court stenographer there. The original autopsy material is in front of them. This is the first time they have ever seen the original autopsy material in terms of the face sheet, the record. Since the time of the assassination, it was the first time they had ever seen the autopsy photos. So they were present when the photos were taken, but they had not been shown the photos before. The doctors who performed the autopsy believed and claimed that President Kennedy had been shot from behind, and the version that the doctors in Bethesda Hospital gave was exactly the same as the Warren Commission supported the Warren Commission. There are a few little problems here that we need to ask some questions about, and there are more than a few, but I'll just mention 2 of them. When I took the deposition of Dr. Humes under oath, I went through the record fairly systematically with him, and we finally got to the question of the original autopsy. So there's a version of the autopsy that is in the National Archives, handwritten. He had very good handwriting. I envied his handwriting. So he has this original version of the autopsy. I asked him a series of questions because I had some suspicions, and he admitted under oath for the first time that the version that is in the National Archives, the original version, was not the original version. He had written another one beforehand, and he had burned the original version. He never told the Warren Commission. He had never told the American public that. He admitted that under oath. I said, "Why did you burn it?" I did not think for a minute I would get a correct answer, but he said the president's blood was on it, and I thought it was gruesome. And I asked him, I already asked him, but I reminded him that he said that he wrote the autopsy while he was at home sitting in front of his fireplace. So I said, "Was there president's blood in your home?" Knowing that it couldn't possibly be. And then he acknowledged that that could not have been the reason, but he could not remember why he had burned the original version and said nothing to anybody about that. The autopsy photos that are in the National Archives do not show a large, massive exit wound in the occipital parietal area. See, I can't say it without touching the back of my head. I've tried, and I can't do it. There's no massive wound in the occipital parietal area that's visible on the photos. So one of the questions is, were these photos doctored? Are the photos accurate? Are the doctors in Parkland Hospital correct or incorrect? So all of these questions came up. We were able, the agency that I worked for, we were able to find the person who developed the original autopsy photo. So her names were on the records, and we found her name was Sandra Spencer. So we located her, and we brought her to Washington. So what she did was she developed the films. So these were slides. There are black and white slides and color slides. These are large format, so large print. So these are not your 35 millimeter prints, but these are large prints. So she develops the color transparencies, black and white transparencies, and then she printed from the transparencies onto Kodak paper. I asked her if she had any prints that she had made at the same time that she developed the autopsy photos and printed the autopsy photos, and she said yes, because she did the developing work for the White House, and she had pictures of President Kennedy that had been taken a couple of days earlier that she kept as a souvenir. So I said, bring those with you, because in theory, the paper that is in the National Archives that the photographs are printed on should be exactly the same as what she had. So she came to the National Archives, she looked at the autopsy photos, the color transparencies, the black and white transparencies, and she said, these are not the photographs that I developed myself. And I said, well, could you describe what is different about these? And she said, yes. She said that the photographs that she developed had a large massive exit wound in the back of the head. So what she said she developed was exactly the same as what the doctors in Parkland Hospital had seen, consistent once again with a shot from the front, not from behind. We then compared the paper of the photographs that she had developed, and the paper in the National Archives is not the paper, the Kodak. Sorry about that mistake. Not the Kodak paper that she had. And she said, these are not the ones that I did. She said, I don't know where they came from, but these are not mine. So I asked her if she had had any experience with autopsies before. I thought, presumably she had not, and she may not know what she's been seeing. We wanted to do comprehensive, not jump to conclusions. And so I was expecting her to say no, she'd done photographs of President Kennedy, but not autopsy. And she said, oh, yes, before I went to work at the Naval Lab in Anacostia, I was an autopsy photographer myself. And so she was very familiar with that. So we have a few questions there. Now, none of this says that we know what the answers to those questions are, but we do have some questions with this.
You mentioned that the person who took the photographs that you interviewed and the photographs that
who developed
the photographs. Did you ever find, or were you ever able to find, the photographs that she developed?
No. No, we pursued this. Here's one of the questions. So there's no massive headwind. We got the original photographs, those that are in the archives. Through the good graces of Kodak, we went to Rochester, New York. That was one time I felt very special. I was whisked through all the security in airports and taken on separate vans. I thought I was a VIP. We went on the plane first, and we have FBI agents there who are guarding the autopsy photos. We digitized them. We did not. Kodak did. Blew them up so we could look at these images, and by my non-expert eye, the photographs have not been doctored, retouched. But the question ends up being when those photographs were taken. And two possibilities. One is before the autopsy, which is what all of the official records say, is the photographs were taken before the autopsy began, or after the autopsy, after the body had been reconstructed. So Galler's mortuary reconstructed the body. Observers, and this is in William Manchester, this is the first time I read about it, William Manchester's Death of a President, that said that the body was so well done you could not tell that he had been shot. So very good reconstruction at the mortuary. Were the photos taken afterwards, and so that after this wound is covered up? Knowing that this is a possibility, when I interviewed the doctors, I asked them, was the body cleaned in any way before the photographs were taken? And they all said no. They described it as being very messy, brain tissue, blood, matted. When you look at the photographs of the back of the head, it's all clean and neatly combed. So before or afterwards, and I can't prove any of this, but for me, the frustrating thing is the Warren Commission could have done this, and the Warren Commission did not do it. 30 years later, you can wonder about this, but you can't really get that. But conceivably, Sandra Spencer developed photographs from the autopsy, or from the photographs taken before the autopsy, and not those that are taken later, and she sees the ones taken later in the National Archives. Now, the evidence seems to point in that direction, but that's also a fair amount of speculation. I can't say I'm really confident that happened, but I suspect that happened, and it would be nice to know, but I'm not expecting to find out. If sometime we end up finding additional autopsy photographs that show that, then we will maybe know the ones that Sandra Spencer developed. She has since died. The autopsy that was performed in Bethesda Naval Hospital was a disgrace. mean, it was a disgrace. When I took the deposition, I asked Dr. Humes what the standard was that he used for the autopsy. And he said, oh, there was some manual that had been created by the Navy that set up the standards. And I said, is that the one that you followed? And he said, yes. And I then pulled out a copy of it, which I had, and handed it. And I said, is this the one that you followed? And he didn't say anything. Or he said, yeah, he answered yes to that. But I could tell, I mean, from my perspective, he thought this is going to be a very bad day. And we then went through this, and he just simply didn't follow the procedures.